Back in the day, shunting trucks was a dangerous job. Running alongside wagons, hooking chains and checking brakes was tiring work, but in bigger yards it was made much worse as shunters would have to walk miles just to get from one end to the other. To make life easier for shunters, however, the Great Western Railway decided that what they needed to do was give their shunters a wagon of their own. Before Britain's railways moved goods using shipping containers, freight would be loaded into individual trucks or vans which would need to be organised into trains heading to their respective destinations. Hump yards allowed for wagons to be organised fairly quickly and efficiently, but as the trucks didn't have any kind of automatic brakes, workers were required to run alongside and apply the brakes manually to stop them from running away or from damaging other wagons by running into them too hard. They also had to couple together the wagons too once they were in place, all of this requiring them to carry around shunting poles, brake sticks and various other tools, all while running around the yard. Smaller locomotives were also used around the yard to move trucks to their appropriate sidings, which meant shunters often spent the day following engines around, coupling and uncoupling wagons to them. Rather than walk, to save their feet, shunters would often get about the yard by hanging on to moving trucks or even hanging off of the locomotives shunting them. The problem was the trucks weren't designed to be ridden, and so it was very easy for shunters to lose their footing, fall off and injure themselves. Drivers and firemen also weren't keen on letting shunters ride in their cabs either, as most shunting engines had very small footplates, leaving little room for a third passenger, meaning shunters either had to risk injuring themselves hanging off an engine or wagon, or suck it up and walk from one end of the yard to the other every time a wagon needed coupling. Seeing how their shunters needed a better way of carrying their tools and getting about, the Great Western Railway came up with a solution. Give the shunters their own wagon. Rather than bother the engine crew or hang off of wagons dangerously, they designed a special truck that would be coupled to the shunting engine as it worked. These trucks had footboards and rails for shunters to safely hang onto, as well as a toolbox fitted in the middle so shunters didn't have to constantly carry around their tools themselves. They also had manual brakes that the shunter could apply themselves, with later designs having vacuum braking equipment fitted too, giving engine drivers a little more stopping power while moving heavier loads. The toolbox came with the added benefit of not just carrying shunting tools, but also chocks to stop trucks from rolling away, as well as ramps, lugs and other equipment needed to re-rail wagons, minor derailments being something that was quite common in shunting yards. The first of the shunting wagons built by the Great Western Railway appeared in 1895, with 143 in use across the country by 1904. An additional 34 had been built by 1913, and another 119 were added to the fleet by the time the railways were nationalised in 1948, with British Railways building an extra 3 of their own. The amount of shunting trucks in each yard varied, with the average being 1 truck per shunting engine in service. Given their small size and limited versatility, it was rare these trucks ever left the yards they were allocated to. Other railways besides the Great Western built their own shunting wagons, such as the LMS and Southern Railways, but these were often made out of old wagons or modified tenders for use in specific yards, unlike the purpose-built GWR ones. Despite their utility, their relatively small size and light weight did make them troublesome to work with. Drivers had to be mindful of the extra length the truck added to the engine while shunting, and their light weight also meant that they were fairly easy to derail too. On top of all that, they weren't exactly the most safe way for shunters to get around either. Don't get me wrong, they were far safer than hanging off of random trucks, but at the end of the day, shunters were still standing on the side of a moving wagon. All it'd take would be a sudden jerk from the engine or slipping on a wet, muddy rail for the shunter to fall and hurt themselves. Regardless of these shortcomings, however, their utility and convenience more than made up for it. The shunting trucks continued to be used on the western region of British Railways for many years after the railways were nationalised, with some diesels even using them, but eventually their usefulness came to an end. Many of the new Class 08 shunting diesels built by BR were fitted with steps and a rail near their front, which allowed shunters to ride on the engine as opposed to a wagon. While they didn't have the same convenient storage as a shunting truck, most shunters were used to not having shunting trucks anyway, so the lack of anywhere to keep re-railing tools and spare equipment wasn't much of a bother outside of Great Western Territory. Eventually, the switch over from individual wagons to shipping containers completely changed how shunting was done, and as such, shunting trucks were no longer needed. A handful, however, have been preserved and are on display at various heritage railways all across the country. Working on the railways was a hard job for everyone involved, but few jobs may have been as hard or as dangerous as the work of shunters. So the fact that the Great Western Railway went out of their way to make their lives so much easier must have certainly been a blessing. And I suppose, when you spend all day organising other people's trucks, it must be nice to have a truck of your own, eh? Subscribe for more.